It looks like I've got a lot of you that are interested in not only my storytelling, but my perspective on U.S. history. Well, that's what I do for a living. I teach a bunch of middle school knuckleheads on what's so important about the United States. And it seems like I'm getting a audience more with the not so much the older generation, but the wiser generation. And the question's been tossed around because it seems like there's always something that interests people about history. Is it World War II? Is it Vietnam? The Civil War always seems to come up. And I've been asked what ultimately led to the Civil War. And that is a very complicated question to ask because I do not believe that it was just slavery. At the heart of everything, the slavery issue is not being solved. We have a huge divide that's happening in our nation during this time period from the 1800s until the first shot at Fort Sumter. We have the North, the South, and the West. We don't really have a big happy family. But I believe there is one event that gets overlooked in history that I believe symbolically began the Civil War. And here's what I'm talking about. I discussed President Andrew Jackson on my last video. Ultimately, talk about the Trail of Tears. But there's a certain event that happened during his presidency that I believe symbolized what was to come. It is foreshadowing the war between the states. That's another way you can declare the Civil War. So what happens is it's Jefferson's birthday. Big celebration. And somewhere in there, after they've done all the toasts, happy birthday, Thomas Jefferson. No, this isn't a goblet with wine or any type of alcoholic drink. This is coffee. But everybody does their toast to Thomas Jefferson. And somewhere in there, Mr. Andrew Jackson steps forward and makes another toast. And he makes a toast specifically to his vice president, Mr. John C. Calhoun. John Calhoun was from South Carolina and was very pro-slavery. South Carolina is always the state, specifically under John Calhoun, who has threatened to secede, has threatened to withdraw from the Union, to withdraw from the United States. Other states have their issues with the North, but they don't stir the pot the way South Carolina and the way not Henry Clay. Henry Clay is the great compromiser, but the way John Calhoun starts all the problems. So there has been something going on called the nullification crisis, where the South is angry about the very high taxes, the high tariffs on imported goods, specifically cotton. They felt like the North is skimming off the top and they're getting rich off of this. And they literally say they will cancel their ability to pay these taxes. In other words, South Carolina says, we're not going to do that. And if you try to make us, we're going to leave the Union. Good luck telling Andrew Jackson that. Andrew Jackson's a guy who says, you disobey me, and I will go to South Carolina, Mr. John C. Calhoun, and hang you from the first tree that I see. So he put something through called the Force Bill. Leading up to this big moment we have, it's a toast. But this toast that Andrew Jackson does, I believe, symbolically started the Civil War. He looks right at Vice President John C. Calhoun and says, to the federal union, everybody's glasses are up, and he's staring dead at Vice President Calhoun and says, the union must be preserved. We don't really know what Vice President John Calhoun said, but it's almost, you could see him gritting his teeth. Cheers, Mr. President. These guys are staring a hole in each other's stomachs. I believe that toast, symbolically between Andrew Jackson and Vice President John Calhoun of South Carolina, symbolically began the Civil War. It took another 30 years for Lincoln to become president and for the South to secede and start the Confederate States. But this is an event that is overlooked. We've always had the issue with slavery. We've had the issue with states' rights on how much power that the federal government can have over the states, which is dividing the country even more. We have this issue of sections of the United States, the North, the South, and the West, who think very differently. but there's something about that toast that foretells the story of the war between the states. Happy Vlogmas number 10, and pertaining to the 10th Amendment, where if it's not listed in the Constitution, then the federal government should stay out of the states. Do I agree with either man? I have some pull and push in there. I have some pros and cons. But for Vlogmas 25-day challenge for VidHouston, I believe this toast ultimately symbolically began the war between the states, also known as the Civil War. See you on day 11.